Get your hair back.
Welcome everyone on January 18th at 3 p.m. to the Finance Committee meeting. Roll call, all is present. Councillor Pelkman is joining us via Zoom. So Councillor, make sure you wave well when you have a question, or I'm sure someone will remind me. Motion to approve the agenda. Councillor Canis, second by Councillor Brennan. All in favor? Thank you, carried. Any declaration of pecuniary interest? See none. So this is the first of our many budget deliberations. Just a reminder, we are going to keep to a 2-hour time limit. We're all busy, but we can have, I'd rather have quality meetings as opposed to the quantity of that meeting, so we can have as many meetings as possible. I think it's important that we have quality. Today we're going to discuss both the operating and capital budgets of finance, treasury, IT, fire, police, and HR. This is the first go around at those particular budgets. The idea is that each of the department heads will give an overview of their budget, and we can ask as many questions as possible. Again, we can come back at this. So this is just the first go around, but the idea is if we see anything as a council on the budget that we think is a hard no, that we agree as a council that there's, that's not going to happen, for lack of better words, we should say so. That allows staff to take it off of their budget and move forward. So let's keep our questions coming, and we'll start with Director Dakin. Director, if you want to go over your budget, and then we'll start with questions.
Great, thank you very much, and welcome council to round 2, I guess, of the new. So just a couple reminders as we move forward. Reminder that 2023 actuals are still somewhat fluid, so we'll be updating those as we move through and have opportunity to make sure that they make a scheduled meeting. Our cutoff, just so you're aware, our cutoff is January 25th. So all directors have to have any expenses that they want in 2023.
Dakin, I apologize, but I always catch my own mistakes. We have a motion to receive the following reports first: the 24-27 draft budget document, the draft capital budget, the draft operating budget. Motion to receive for information. Councillor Brennan, second by the Deputy Mayor. All in favor? It's always nice when I catch my own mistakes. Sorry, Director.
Okay. So just a reminder that those 23 actuals are somewhat still fluid. We're going through, so the cutoff, just so you're aware, is January 25th, so a week today is sort of the last date to put 23 expenses in. And then we cut that off and everything becomes 2024 expense. So as we have opportunity through the meetings to update those numbers, we'll do them as we can. The other thing, just that summary sheet that is the beginning of your detailed operating budgets, just a reminder, that's a new look as well. So before we used to have a column that said taxation, revenue, so now what we've done is stacked the revenue on the top of a column for a given year. So your taxation and non-tax revenue, or in that case, user fees and those kinds of things, are in there as an aggregate total, and then we divide out the expenses by department below, just so there's no confusion. And again, we'll be updating that spreadsheet as well as we move through the process with time commit. So let me just dive right in. I'll just give you a quick overview of the first one under my purview, which is Treasury. So this is sort of, for lack of a better term, the finance department. And I'll just give you a quick overview. So what you're seeing is a total increase in the budget of 10%. And when we look at the total increase in taxation, there's an increase in taxation of 11%. And you say, well, how can we go up 10% on expenses and go up 11% on income? And that is due to reserve transfers. So in 2023, we used, basically, we put in an $80,000 transfer from reserves as a form of income. That has been cut to 40 in 2024. So that equates to basically a $65,000 increase in taxation, which is 11%. So that, in essence, gives you an explanation as to the difference in the revenue on the taxation side. Just another point, the anomaly that sort of jumps off the page on the detail is that $80,000 transfer I just talked about becoming a $1.1 million transfer, and that was the funds that were loaned to Caradoc Housing Corporation. So that just, we needed a department to move it through. So that's what that looks at. So as you can see, we haven't even brought forward the transfer of 80,000. Just as a sort of an idea of how we use those transfers. So unless there's a specific, so I'll give you an example where we would use a specific reserve transfer and actually do that transfer, and that would be during an election year. So each year we set aside a percentage of money in the council budget to go into the election reserve. And then in the election year, the year of an election, we actually transfer those funds to cover the election. So that would be one where sort of the transfer, budgeted transfer would actually equal the actual. But typically, transfers from reserves become as a need to, not necessarily we automatically just do those transfers. So you'll see when we actually do the finals, and that comes before council, the transfers from reserves for 2023, you'll see that some of the ones that were budgeted didn't even take place because we had enough income to cover without that. So I'll move on from there. The other thing that you'll notice is within the treasury budget is nothing budgeted under fleet, yet there was transfers. So we're in the second year of our fleet, our new fleet model. So unfortunately, just like the 1.1 million above, treasury becomes the stopgap until we sort of balance things out. So we're in the process of sort of aligning that fleet, that new fleet program, which looks at leases as opposed to purchases. So those adjustments flow through. So once the year end is closed out, that number will probably be more in line with the budgeted numbers that are there because the vehicles will line up with the correct department. The other increases within 2024 really fall under insurance. So insurance, we're seeing about a 6 to 7% increase in our insurance rates. Transaction fees, so one of the things with the online banking and, online payment, we are incurring more fees because people are making more payments online to us, so that increases that number. The other thing is obviously postage. One of the big things that's driving that one is we now do our water and wastewater bills in-house. When we originally started that program, we were sending those out to a mail house. So we weren't incurring the postage. It was built into the mail house expense. But one of the things that we've found is with the equipment we have here at the town hall, it's actually a savings of about $1,000 on a monthly basis by just doing those in-house. So those savings are recognized otherwise, but the cost in the postage is increased. And the other factor there is office supplies, obviously. Again, being the stopgap for most of the municipality, or all of the municipality, a lot of the office supplies flow through, so through our department, and a lot of those office expenses have increased. So that's a major driving factor, and then of course, not unlike any other department, wages and benefits make up the balance of that increase that you're seeing. So I'll stop with the treasury, and happy to answer any questions on that one.
Questions for, yep, Councillor Wilsey.
Just looking through, and I see that the transfer to Caradoc Housing is at the top. I see an in at 1.1, and I see a surplus at the bottom of 789,000, but I don't see any transaction that's big enough to have that 1.1 million out to Caradoc Housing. If I just do the math quick on that, that would put us at a $500,000 deficit. But can you explain why the out's not there, but the in is?
Because, so we're showing the income, but the out goes actually to a loan receivable, which would be on the balance sheet, so it won't show up in your income statement. So we recognize the revenue because we're bringing revenue in, but the outside is actually a balance sheet account. So again, those
Go
are.
ahead, Councillor.
I guess on any accounting entry, even if it shows up on the balance sheet, it still has to be somewhere on the income statement. So would it not be there? Because if we're showing that amount, that means we're not having a $780,000 surplus. We're actually having like a $300,000 or $400,000 deficit in this department, which is quite a substantial difference.
Yeah, so you are correct that there is probably a deficit right now, but what we're going to be doing obviously is that transfer to from reserves will end up being, you're right, a transfer out. So that hasn't been accounted. So a lot of the reserve, like I said, reserve transfers haven't been done yet. And those are the things that we'll be looking at. So you're right, that 1.1 will end up showing as going to, I guess, a loans receivable, and will show up on the balance sheet. So you are correct that currently we're sitting at about a $500,000 deficit, which will be, those are the things that we need to adjust for in the closing out 2023.
Okay, Councillor Pelkman, did you have a question?
I have a request. If Bill could turn his microphone towards his mouth, because I can see on the picture that it's pointed kind of away from him. It keeps cutting in and out, but if he could, it only cuts out when he's getting quieter, so I'm assuming that that's why, because the microphone's not pointed at him.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. More questions? Okay, seeing none. Director, did you want to do, was it finance now or the IT?
I'll move into IT.
Yep.
So IT, with IT, you're seeing basically a 30% increase in taxation, and as well as 30% increase. 30% increase in the budget and the same in the taxation. Some of the highlights here is you'll notice we're moving to an Office 365, so that's going to be a 2-year transition. So 2024 will be the first year of moving a number of the clients over to the Office 365. So that's the beginning of the 2024, and that will also be in 2025. Telephone lines and cell now are under a provincial vendor of record. So where we've sort of moved away from our, so we had some penalties on some of them. So you'll see that in some of the line items for cell and data, there's an overage in the 2023, but those are together the TELUS billing and vendor. We've now moved to vendor of record with the province, which is with TELUS, which is interesting. So we've actually saved some money by moving to the vendor of record, and that's on telephone lines. We're still with Bell, but again, we're moving over in 2024 to vendor of record. Both of those vendors of records through the province are up for bid this year, and the nice thing with using the province, we're able to take advantage of their negotiations, and then we benefit from those. So currently, Bell is the vendor of record for telephone lines, which we are currently with, and TELUS is the vendor of record for cell service, which we are currently with. So those will be moving over. So there will be some savings, and those are recognized within the budget of 2024. Two things that really are driving this budget up. Number one is instead of taxing each year for replacements and those kinds of things, what we've done is moved, you'll see an increase in the transfer to reserve line. So in 2023, that was 32,000. In 2024, it's 175. So what we're doing is, instead of taxing for upgrades to servers, switches, those kinds of things, the year in which we're replacing them, we're building up a life cycle reserve. So those payments will come out on a life cycle reserve and won't be taxed in the year. So there's a savings. We did a quick calculation. So there's a savings of about probably 70 to 80,000 a year in moving to that model. So that now what we can do is spread out the cost over a number of years as opposed to taxing in the year in which we purchase those. And then last but not least, you'll notice that there's a contract position that's added to the IT, and that is security related. And there is, just so council's aware, there will be an in-camera report coming on February the 5th. We went through our security ranking in late November, early December, and we just got that report back, and so we're going to be bringing that report forward to council. And so a lot of the findings within that report, you'll see, we're hoping help you understand the need for a contract position for that. Just on that note, we're connected. So here's just how this cybersecurity works. So last week, I don't know if anyone heard, but on one call, so when you called to have locates done, they were hacked. So because we do locates and they're connected to our server to get that information, those are the kinds of vulnerabilities where if we didn't have the proper security in place, once they're into one call, because we're connected, they could get into ours. But we have security in place, obviously, and we've got flagged actually today. It was interesting. We got flagged today about that hack, and that basically there was no attempt, obviously, at ours. But those are the kinds of things where we need to stay on top of the security. So I think that's the end of the line for the information technology. Happy to answer any questions on that one.
Okay, Councillor Pammer.
So are you referring to the IT police information technology and IT police contracted? Is that what you were just talking about, or is that something different?
So, through the chair to Councillor Pammer, it's something different. So if you look down on the very bottom, on the you'll see in 2024, 90,000 for the 2-year service contract.
Okay. So this is for the police, sorry, this money here is for the police upgrades, or it's something different? No.
Something different.
Something different.
Anything to do with, that raises a good point. So the NG 911 that we're working on, we have 2 positions on that one, which are 100% funded through the NG 911 grant. So they actually don't flow through on this one yet. So once those people are hired on, we'll be then showing that one. But there's 100% grant on those ones, yeah.
Any other questions? I have one, just General Director Dakin, because on all of the budget, there's line items, service contracts. And generally, what does that entail? Because I look at it on IT, I know what a service contract is on IT, but on each, pretty well, every one of the departments, there's a line item, service contract. So that was one that I highlighted specifically in IT, because it's, you know, from 2022, it's almost a threefold increase.
Yeah.
Is that a literal service contract?
So, through the chair to the chair, so that's a great question. So service contracts are basically, for instance, a good example is the Office 365.
Okay.
So moving to a Microsoft service, software as a service, it's a service contract that we would sign with Microsoft to get that product. Any of their website maintenance, there's a lot of service contracts within the IT simply because of the fees. So a lot of the software that we provide from the municipality, those things are, that's what that service contract is.
Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, sorry, Deputy Mayor, my apologies.
Yeah, no problem. Through you to the director, I have a question regarding cell phones for PW operators. What is PW short form for?
Through the chair to the deputy mayor, those are our public works. So PW is
And
public works.
So they currently do not carry cell phones? Because
No,
I
they
see this
don't.
as a new one.
Yes. So one of the things is the public works operators, we've just added a new software through our, actually our asset management program. It's called Maintenance Manager, and the Maintenance Manager allows what's called route patrol. So what this does is now the drivers will have their cell phone and will be able to track their route. So if there's, first of all, it's great for insurance purposes because then we have a record of the route that they drove, when they drove, times, all that stuff's GPS off of the phone, as well as any anomalies. So if they happen to see a sign down, they can record that on that app, and then that gets put into a ticket that Walter, the public works manager, would see that there was a sign missing at this corner or whatever. So it's a tracking device, it's a tracking app that each of the drivers will now have on a cell phone. So previously, the only people that were carrying cell phones, to my knowledge, were the lead hands. So there would be two, one for the Mount Bridges site and one for the Strathroy site, but now every one of those drivers will have a cell phone.
Deputy Mayor?
So these cell phones, are they individually issued to the employee as kind of their phone? Or is it a phone that is left and when you come in on duty, you would take the phone with you?
I guess I'm not familiar with how they're gonna line that out. There would be a phone for each operator, so I guess the easy answer would be whether they leave them in at the work yard at the end of their shift, and then they just pick up their phone at the end. I'm not sure how that's gonna roll out. Maybe that's a good question that we can bring up during the EPW. They can answer that one as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Councillor Wilsey?
Through the chair to Director Dagan, I wonder if you can speak to, just, I don't know if this is coming in, I don't see any red flags or anything, but I'm just looking at the surplus and how much that differs from the budget. It's like, it's almost 20% off of the total budget for the year. So I'm just wondering if, did we miss budget by 20% this year, or is there more stuff that's still coming in, or is it some combination of that? Just, how are we 20% off with only 1 month left?
Through the chair to Councillor Wilsey, so I would say it's a combination. You'll notice, for instance, one that I flagged on my review is if you look at annual admin software and licensing, we budgeted 3,000 and we've only spent half. So that's one where I think there's a license that's still missing that hasn't come in. So I think that one is a good example of how there's probably some expenses missing that are still to come in for that one, as well as I would say that there's some where you can see where we clearly haven't spent some of the money, or the majority of the money. So it's a balance of the two, I would say.
Councillor Wilsey.
So as a follow-up to that, then this department, probably with most of the other ones, we can do an initial review like we're doing now, but I think before we look at what next year's is and what's approved, we should make sure that we have all the expenses to make sure that we know that we're actually accurate for what we spent the year before. And that's just more of a comment. You can respond if you like, but I think that's
I
more.
was just gonna say that's correct, through the chair to, yeah, so I think as we firm these up, that's why I think we want one last, or council should have one last pass at these things so that we have the finals will be updated for that final one. Yep.
Councillor Derbyshire.
Thank you. Through you to the director. I just wondered about, is this where kind of this equipment leasing falls into too, where we just don't have the final numbers, or are we no longer leasing?
Through the chair to Councillor Derbyshire, so is there a specific leasing that you're talking about? You mean like the one I just pointed out, where we're out by half?
Yeah, is that,
That's a comment.
the planning and zoning equipment leasing, it was 8,200 in 2022. The actual was, I don't know, and then there was nothing last year in the budget and nothing there. Like,
Yeah.
and then if you go up, you can just, like almost anywhere where it says equipment leasing in said department, there's nothing there.
Through the chair to Councillor Derbyshire, I understand now. So, yeah, so like for instance, that planning one, a good example of that one is the plotter that we have downstairs. So it's a wide area, wide format printer that we were leasing, which at the end of the lease, we just bought it, so we own it now. And so those are where we're clearing up some of those and getting other leasing on a lot of those equipment. The other thing to maybe point out in lieu of that is we're moving away from standalone printers as well, because of the cost of running those printers and pushing more to our photocopiers, which have a less than 1 cent to print in black and white as opposed to 8 cents on a printer. So that's what we're doing. Yep. Thank you.
Oh, that's good, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. Thank you, Director Dakin. I believe we will now move on to
Sorry, one more.
one more.
Yeah, sorry.
Never
I
saw.
really appreciate you letting me off the hook that quick, but one more, and that's the municipal debt.
Okay, yes.
So, I guess two things here. I had a great discussion the other night with Councillor Wilsey on how do we handle our debt, and some real lights came on, I think, for both of us. For me, the light was tracking debt back to a department. So I'll give you the example of the fire department. The fire department has about $224,000 in loan payments that sit in debt. It doesn't show up in the fire department. So that kind of says, well, is our fire 240,000? You know, it kind of makes it look a cheap date, if I could put it that way. So one of the things that we're going to do in moving this forward is say, all right, instead of having, so because it's taxation, the taxation sits in the municipal debt. So that taxation will move back to the fire, but will show a line of debt payment coming to the municipal debt department, we'll call it. The reason this happened is back when I started in 2012, 2013, debt was scrambled all throughout our budgets, and we really had no way of tracking where our debt was. And so one of the good things, very similar at home, if you know how much you owe, you can pay it. But if you have no idea how much you owe, it makes it difficult. So in bringing it all to one, it was a good idea. But I think one of the things that was pointed out, and rightly so by Councillor Wilsey, was, well, that really takes it out of the department. It's not a department expense any longer. So we're going to correct that. The other thing is, with municipal debt, is, I'll give you the example of the two roads that we did last year. So Drury and Queen Street, we were going to take out debt on that. That doesn't show up on here. And typically there's a 1-year window with that debt, simply because of, at least with Infrastructure Ontario, because of the timing of that So what we're trying to do is we're working through a process within the finance department of trying to find a way to put a placeholder in there at least. The issue becomes interest rates. So I think what we gotta do is we just gotta be creative in how we come up with a sort of what I'll call an average interest rate that allows us to sort of put that placeholder in there so that, again, same thing, we've got a better control and understanding of what our debt is, and then it ties into our debt limits. So although that wasn't sort of a line by line, that gives you an understanding of where we're headed on that one. So again, one of the things as we update these tables, those things will be sort of moved around, just so you can see. Again, if there's any questions on that, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Yep, Councillor Wilsey.
Just doesn't matter, Director Day, that was a great explanation of our conversation. The one part that, it's just a small part that he missed, was just how we were going to deal with the tanker that we took out of general reserves that didn't come out of fire, that they need to replenish. We had a bit of a discussion about that, but you had a great explanation if you could go into that as well.
Yep, Director Dake.
Through the chair to Councillor Wilsey, I thank you for setting that up well. So I think we should maybe start a podcast or something. Anyways, the way that's going to work is that we need to then, same sort of thing, council needs to decide if there's going to be an interest charge, because right now we left that sitting in reserve. I don't know why we would charge ourselves interest, but I think what we would do is set up a payment schedule, in essence, very similar to a debt, so that that debt payment sits in fire or debt, but the payment then goes, instead of going to Infrastructure Ontario, would be paid back into the reserve. And anytime that we do that, so very similar to the 1.1 million for Caradoc Housing, that would be set up as a loan, so as the payments come, they go back into the reserve. Did that capture it? I think that, okay.
Any other questions? Okay.
Steve.
Oh, sorry, Steve, Councillor Pelkman.
Yes, thank you. To the chair, to Director Dakin. So I just wanted to make sure I heard that right. We won't see the loan payments from Drury Lane and Queen Street until 2025. And then second part of that question is, when do you expect the fire hall to show up on our debt payment schedule?
Through the chair to Councillor Pelkman. So I think you won't see the actual debt payments. I don't think until 2025. But I think what we would like to do is put some placeholders in there for that debt, so we have an idea of what our debt payments are, so we don't exceed our limit. And likewise with the fire hall. So I think what we do is we sort of set up a placeholder saying this is what our debt payments are going to be for the fire hall. Here's where they're coming from. So council's well aware of how that works. And then going forward, that just becomes part of our debt schedule. The thing will be is that those placeholders will, once we actually take out the debt, then we'll sort of update those numbers to reflect what the actual is. So I guess to put it the best way I can think of, those debt payments will be a budgeted number from a standpoint of what do we think the interest rate is going to be, and what that's going to look like. So it becomes a placeholder. Again, one of our things is trying to be as conservative as possible, so we'll make that as realistic as possible, obviously, so that when we actually do, we can just fill it in.
You have a follow-up, Councillor Pelkman?
Yeah, and so what year do you expect to see the first payment from the fire hall?
I guess, depends on how quickly we get it completed, because obviously, I would say probably first payment in the fire hall is going to be probably late 2025, early 26. Because that one we can move pretty quick. Once we get the numbers closed off, we can probably apply for the loan early. Actually, to be honest, maybe that one we're going to have to use a construction loan through Infrastructure Ontario, so we would be paying interest only. That's the way those construction loans work. You pay interest only. So we'd probably have some interest payments in 2024, but the final loan itself with principal and interest would be early 25.
Any follow-up question? Councillor Wilson?
As we're sitting here and thinking, I was just thinking about the development charges and the reserve accounts and all those other accounts that we have that are negatives, in addition to the ones we're talking about with the loans here. Are they gonna show up on here, or, I know I've asked before, and are we gonna account for any interest if there's loans taken out, or are we using our cash for that? And if we're using cash, that comes into, maybe we should look at what our bank account balance statements are compared to our debt and what actual reserves are, which I know we're doing a lot of that already, but I just don't see that here. And I guess my question on that is if there is any interest or anything that's gonna be accumulated on either the development charges because we're going negative on the fire hall to put them in, or the reserves, the report that we had in the fall on the reserves for wastewater, I believe, if I'm remembering right, I thought it was like 3 million negative. I know some of that's allocated funds we haven't spent yet, so I know that's not all debt, but I guess just for clarity and transparency is can we record that somewhere, or if there's debt charges, or I don't know how that's gonna work, and that might be too much for this meeting also.
So through the chair to Councillor Wilsey, if I understand the question, if we're going into a negative on a reserve or well, DCs are reserves, but just reserve funds. So the question is, how do we account for interest on going into that negative amount? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the first part of it, is how we account for any interest if there is any. But the other question is if we're just using funds from other accounts to fund that deficit, how do we make sure that our overall number, like if this is negative and it's pulling out of here, but then we need to spend this money, but we don't have that money, so then it shows positive, but it's negative, and just some clarity and transparency. I think that might be too much for this meeting, but I think that was one of the things that I'd asked earlier, but I think it kind of got lost in a different thing. Just want to make sure that whatever we're doing with moving money and covering deficits still leaves us in a good position and actually know where we are as a whole.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Wilsey. So exactly. So what we're going to do is we will, as we allocate funds from a DC, we're going to reduce the DC by that amount, whether we spend it or not. Okay, so, and then a good example is, to be honest with you, in the current debt, we have DCs coming from the sewer, DCs to pay for the Mount Bridges sewer system that is almost complete. The payments for that is almost complete. So what we do is we actually take the debt payment out of the DC, so the DC is declining by that amount. Same thing with taxation. Obviously, the difference will be the taxation is sort of the same day, we'll call it. So we're going to show the taxation piece being the same amount. So the DCs are going to be dropping if we're taking interest, or if we're taking loan payments out of DCs, you'll see them coming out of DCs, and likewise out of tax. Anytime that we're playing one fund against another, obviously what we would do is debit the one fund and credit the other, and vice versa. So we'll have a running total on those DCs, very similar to what we're doing now with our capital 10-year, 15-year process. And Lindsay just reminded me, the DCs, so our DCs have their own bank account. So DCs are segregated funds, along with some of our reserve funds that we call reserve funds. We actually have bank accounts to back those up. So that's where we have the cash to back up a lot of those. But if we are, some of them now, the DCs where we're starting to buy things in advance of the DCs that we're going to collect. So roads would be a good example, where we're putting in sewers and stuff into subdivisions before those subdivisions are sold. As we get the DCs from those, they would fly back in. Hopefully that makes it clear.
We can, if you have more, Counselor, we get more, yeah, I understand. Anything else for Director D? Thank you, Director. Very much appreciated. Deputy Chief Beasley, Fire Services.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Hopefully before you, you've got the operating budget for the fire department. It was drafted by Chief Smith, and with the assistance of Director Dakin here, hopefully I'll be able to answer any questions that you have based on what you see.
Are there any questions of either Director Dakin or Deputy Chief Beasley? Go ahead, Councilor Wills. You have a couple too, so you go first.
I guess there's a couple detailed ones. Actually, there's a list of about 20 or 25 that I emailed to Director Dakin for the different departments. Some of them are on here. I'm gonna ask Director Dakin if I can, if he would like me to hold off on those, because I think they'll come later.
Okay.
Just for his input on that, whether he wants me to ask them now, or, I know I just sent them yesterday, so
Through the chair to Councillor Wilsey, so I think we're prepared to answer those ones right now if you want, and we can go from there.
Okay.
A number of those were around the, I'm gonna pull the sheet out here. So for fire, right, so fire was under the licensing. So there was a couple where we talked about transfer to fleet. So we've talked a bit about the fleet, which is also the loan payment thing that we talked about. But the other one was, so you had highlighted two, where the maintenance and licensing, where we had budgeted 11.5 and spent 47. So the line below that on the budget, so what it was some allocations, and these are things that we catch at year end. So in this one, we had budgeted 38.5, and what's the line called?
It's the
Radio
managed service agreement.
Radio managed services. So if you look at that one, we budgeted 38.5 and we spent 1,000. And the line above, which is the one that Councillor Wilsey pointed out, was 11.5 and we spent 47. So what happened, we checked on that one today as well and noticed that the contract had gone into the wrong line. So basically, if you add the two of them together, the 47 and the 1,000, you're almost bang on to what the two should be. So it's one went into the wrong account. So these are the kinds of things that we catch at year end, obviously. Hopefully we catch them sooner. And then the other one was vehicle maintenance. So and that, I believe, was in the Station 1, so we budgeted 45,000, and we spent 88, and that was basically some work that had to be done. There was one, tires I think was one.
Tanker 14.
And Tanker 14 required tires, and some, there was a turbo.
to save us some time, Director Dakin.
Go ahead, Counselor.
Not to interrupt, I wasn't really I wasn't necessarily questioning the amount of what you spent it on, that wasn't.
No, but
that. I was more looking at the fact that this would be the second year in a row where we exceeded the budget by quite a bit, and the budget for 2024 doesn't meet either the expenses from 2022 or 2023. So I was wondering if that 55,000 for 2024 should actually be a higher number to cover what the actual maintenance expenses seem to be. And some of this is, I'm not asking to try to get reductions to get numbers down. I'm asking to have a good point to start from so that we can see if we do need to look at things, just make sure we're looking at a realistic budget. That's what my focus was for this one, not to try to find cuts or savings at this point yet.
So through the chair to Councillor Wilsey, so I think what I was trying to highlight there was the fact that Different vehicles in that case, we can't really predict. So we're trying to guesstimate, or not guesstimate, trying to sort of predict to the best of our ability what those expenses, or I guess the fire department's trying to estimate what those things are. So it just so happens timing and stuff on those things. So one of those things we'll take back and take a look and see if we need to adjust those, but I think for the most part, we try and look at a 5-year running average as opposed to a 2 or 3 year on those ones. But the point is well taken in that we need to sort of keep an eye on if it's constantly going over and we're constantly under budgeting, then we've got an issue. Yeah.
Any other questions of Deputy Chief? Councilor Derbyshire.
I just had one on the protective gear that we voted in to buy a second set. I don't know whether that falls in here or not, or whether it's programmed in, or kind of where that.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Derbyshire, that expenditure went into the capital budget, as far as I'm aware, and then that's going to be programmed in for replacement through that budget. If you want to answer that.
So I'll follow up on that with Councillor Derbyshire. So half came out of the 2023 budget, and then there's, I think it's 140 just off the top of my head, that is being spent in 2024 for the other half of that money. The bill just came in actually at the end of December, so that works out well that we'll pay half of it out of the 23 budget and half out of the 24 budget.
So it doesn't show in fire, it's in council?
No,
budget?
it's in fire, but it's in capital. So,
Oh, okay.
yep. Which you,
So it's
you should
just
have
part-
as well.
Okay. It'll be on another sheet.
It's on the capital sheet, yep.
Councilor Pelkman, and then Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for paying attention. You're 3 for 3. I just wanted to ask a follow-up on Councillor Derbyshire's question. So I understand why the purchase of the second set of gear was a capital cost, but as we hire new firefighters, would that not be an operational expense? And have you accounted for that new firefighters will have 2 sets of gear as they get hired? I'm not looking for a specific number. I just want to know if you have accounted for that when you hire new firefighters.
Yep. Know that, Director, or Chief Beasley?
Yeah, through the chair, we're just looking at one that now our eyes are not focusing on this issue.
It is in there.
It is in there. Could you just want to?
Protective clothing replacement.
Right there.
There we go, yeah. Just so that line is that, through the chair again, apologies for that. Yeah, it's a line item down there as protective clothing replacement.
It's by
Sorry, CAO McKee.
Yeah, by, sorry.
So, sorry, so just to clarify to Councillor Pelkman's question, yes, in the 2024 budget, and there's a line here for $22,950 for those new hires and those costs that are not simply replacement costs through capital. So yes, there's money within the operating budget.
By station.
Yeah. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Over to Deputy Chief Beasley. Right at the very top, I see, going back, I'm looking at the third line, the WSIB. I see that the actual for 2022 was like 2,800, and then our actual goes up in 23 to just over 5. And then now we're budgeting for 4,600, which is perfectly fine, but is that difference, does it have to do with the number of claims? And if so, is there mitigation purposes in to ensure health and safety of people, or is that more of the fact that rates for WSIB are fluctuating?
Just one second.
Yeah, and it might actually be, Director Payne might know on the second end of the question.
If I may, Your Worship, I can answer Deputy Mayor's, through Deputy Mayor, through the Chair. You're absolutely correct. The new framework for WCB is fluctuating, so it's based on the previous year's performance of WCB. Some of the WCB costs is attributed to your claim experience. So more injuries, the higher your premiums are, so that is indicative of that. I don't have the sheet in front of me, but I would imagine the increase was from a claims experience from 2023. Our hope for 2024 is we reduce that claim experience, hence the reason that number's lower.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Apologize.
Councillor Wilson.
Just a question on verifying or clarifying where the second set of gear came out. As I'm looking at the capital budget, and there's 4 items on it. There's 2 different sheets that we had. One had 3 items, one had 4. Neither one of them list the gear as an item on there for 2023 or 4. And then the fire hall replacement renewals is still there, but I thought we pulled the funds out of that line item to pay for the gear. So just if it's not in the operations, then it's in the capital. I just would like to see it in the capital, and right now I don't see it in the capital or the operations for that amount.
Director Chief, I had the same question.
And this can be an update later. It doesn't have to be right
Yeah, it
now.
can be later.
Like, or there's another version coming anyway.
So it is, I don't have it right in front of me, but I know it is in the capital budget for 2024 of 140,000, if I'm not mistaken. It'll be in the, there were 3 items for 2024 for the fire department, as I recall. One was so the Station 1 replacement for 10 million, the 50,000 for Cascade system, and then you'll see 140,000 for the bunker gear.
Yeah, I see that for 2024.
And then in 2023, because we haven't done that yet, that will be then reflected when we do the payment, because we just got the bill. So it will be then split out, so we'll remove money from the fire, I think we had renewal, and then also then show a new line item called bunker gear, and split those 2 out.
So we'll see that later.
Yep.
Can I ask one question? So I had one question, either director or possibly the director a little more. I did note on the capital in 2025, $4 million, I believe, for Mount Bridges Fire Hall, number 2. Did I see that correctly? And my question was that, and that we haven't approved or anything, that's fine, was that just an estimate of what you think a hall would cost? And I just wonder where that number came from.
Yeah, that number came from the chief.
Okay.
So it is just an estimate at this time. We wouldn't be building the same size of hall for Station 2. We wouldn't have the admin quarters and all of that. So there would be some savings with regards to that. But that number came from the chief at the time.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Just one further question. Under Mount Bridges Dispatch, I see 22-23 where both actuals of $8,700, 24, 25, 26 are all now down to like $400 and change. I see that Strathroy and Melbourne dispatch services have remained constant on that line item. So I'm just wondering, did something happen with the dispatch service in the Melbourne that has reduced it significantly? It would be on page 2 of your report, about a little bit further than halfway down. The 3rd line item on the Melbourne side.
that appears like a good catch. Yeah, we'll dive into that one and find out what happened. But I wonder if things shifted. Yeah, so thank you for pointing that out. We'll take a look at that.
Okay. Councilor Derbyshire.
I just had a question. I think it's through you to the deputy chief. When we come to training new recruits and upgrading everyone to the standard and certification, is that what our training budget is here? Or does that fall somewhere else? Getting these guys certified and A or DZ licenses?
Through the chair, the council adoption, no, that's where that falls into that. So that's the monies that we spend with the Regional Training Centre to qualify our new firefighters and get them up to the provincial standard.
Okay.
Also, including that as well is if we are running promotion, depending on your rank now, you have to qualify, have certain qualifications to be a captain, so that also that training money comes out there as well.
Anything else? Seeing, oh, sorry, Councilor Derbyshire, I saw your finger there getting ready.
Sorry, I was just looking through it. Some of them, I don't know whether everyone is now certified and we're all off and running, but the one here, the one is completely gone. For the Strathroy Training Development, EXP, I don't know what that is there. But it was $500 in 2022 and it's gone. Well, maybe you just eliminated it and made it all one under the top section there. Maybe that's why they're just not there. So that would be training as a whole for all three departments. Is that what I'm to understand then is basically $22,000?
Yes.
Okay, so that's, all three are included in the top line up there. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
I believe now, Mr. Payne, Director Payne, we will discuss HR.
Thank you, Worship. Good afternoon, Council. I'll run you through the HR budget, the small but mighty budget. However, it's looking at about approximately 5 to 6%, and I say approximate because I do want to dovetail into a couple of things. Drawing your attention to the summary sheet with all the GLs on the left and the summary on the top right, if you're there. Few points of interest I do want to capture. Director Dakin has already alluded to it. A lot of the GLs have not hit the year end yet, so I expect some of those training GLs to be increased. But for the most part, the training GLs, that's the lion's share of my department budget, or a large portion, is all the training for the municipality falls under my budget, working with each director according to their needs. So that excludes police and fire. But I do want to draw your attention to three things before I go into the detail. I found some reduction, which is a good thing. If you're on that sheet that I alluded to, on the specific GLs under the bylaw enforcement training, it shows a 2024 budget of $10,300 for training.
Wait, just 1 second.
Sorry to interrupt. Could you just tell us what page you're on? Because we're scrolling through trying to find the pages. Because it's jumping all around depending on department.
So it's the income statement for HR.
Is there a page number?
6. What's page 6 on my printouts?
Not on printouts, but on the online version, what would it be in the PDF?
Mine is
6.
6.
Page 6 of 33.
Thank you. And if everybody could do that, that would be really helpful.
Yes.
So just building on that, the 2024 budget shows 10,300 for bylaw. That is incorrect. It's actual going to be 1952. I will work with the directors to get this updated for the next finance meeting. Draw your attention about 6 lines down to cemetery training. It shows 3,000 for 2024. It should be 1,545. Drawing it down another 3 lines to West Middlesex training. It shows a 2024 budget of 2,000. It should be 2,832. I identified that just after the posting came out from the director, but those are already been updated, and we'll see that in the next release. So I just wanted to point that to your attention. For the most part, the training, I'll speak training, has been decent in the municipality. There's a few shortfalls, and not picking on council. We had budgeted 7,000 for council for training, and it was less than 1,000 of actual spend on that. Most of the other departments are at or near their budget numbers. IT, we found some savings working with Manager Payne with respect to, we have some training that we brought in online as opposed to sending some staff away for training. We found some savings earlier this year, so I didn't spend that budget of 10,000. It's approximately around 5,000 on that, so some savings there. Points of interest for council's consideration, or I guess knowledge. The service contracts or contracted services for HR essentially are disability management. So we have contracts with Canada Life. That's our disability management portfolio. We have a few other service contracts for HR downloads, which is our training platform. When we get new hires and what have you, it's an online platform. Same as MSDS Online. We have an online portal for chemical management in the municipality. A couple of the other contracts that we've had in the year is we have a tailored ergonomics. So we have an ergonomist coming in, working on our health and safety program, building PCDAs for each of our positions. So that's kind of the lay of the land of some of the contracts we have within the HR umbrella. I'll focus on one particular item in the 2024 budget for service contracts. We are due up for a compensation study. We did our last study in 2018, 2019 for compensation. You do it approximately every 4 to 5 years, so we're on the mark for having one complete for 25, but doing it in 24. So that's on there for a $25,000 increase in the budget line there. But I'm open to questions. Please, happy to answer any.
Councillor Brandon.
Thank you, Your Worship. With regard to councillor training, the $7,000 versus $1,500 difference there. Although I did not attend, I understood we had a training session with Nigel Belchamber, and would that have been billed to our council training, because there was some expense there, I believe?
Great question through Your Worship to Councillor Brennan. I believe it just hit a different GL. It never came out of this particular GL for the training through my department, but I believe it went under legal and legislative or a different.
CEO.
And if I may, that might be one of the corrections we make with the GL coding at the end of the year to move it to the correct account.
Because it was through the mayor to the CEO, because I believe it was intended to be councillor training.
That
So
is
therefore,
correct.
the money has been spent.
Thank you. I have one, Director Payne, just looking at wages and benefits. What percentage of the wages and benefits line is actual benefits? Would you know that off the top of your head? Is it 10%, 15%? I see that on everyone. I'm just waiting for a chance to ask it.
No, for sure. Through Your Worship to yourself. When we're looking at benefit costs, and I'm going to give you an envelope, we're looking anywhere from 32 to 35% of a wage for full-time, when you add in your perks of your benefits and what have you. 32 to 35% is an approximate number.
Okay. So 35% of that wages and benefits is benefits, not
Is
just.
that correct?
Okay, thank you. Higher than I thought it would be. Thank you. We'll go, Councillor Kennis and you, Councillor Wilsey.
Well, just on that, I think there's a separate line, right? There's and this would just be the department, the fourth last line is full-time wages and then part-time wages and then payroll benefits is the last line, right? And that works out to exactly like 30%, like you're saying, so.
I was looking on this sheet and just had a question. Councillor Wilsey.
The chair through to Director Payne. Just a question about the HR cemeteries and training. When I looked through and did my numbers, I looked to see what the actuals were from 2023 and compared to the budget numbers for 2024. I didn't actually flag that one as an issue until you said your 2024 number was dropping by half. Because in 2023, you spent $2,900 with a budget of $1,500, so you almost doubled it. And now you're saying you found the savings of taking it back to the 2023 budget that you almost doubled. So could I get some clarification on why we doubled in 2023 and why it won't happen again in 2024?
Through the chair to Councillor Wilson. Great question. So 2023, we had a new hire. Council approved a new position 2023 for cemetery. So with that, we looked at our training requirements of the team. So we did bring in backhoe training for all 3 operators in the cemetery. It's been some time since they've had any type of formal technical training there. So that would be a one-time training for 2023. I would not expect that training to hit us again 3 to 4 years out. So that may come back to refresher training, but it was backhoe training which drove that cost up. So.
Councillor Hippel.
Thank you through yourself to Director Payne. This should be an easy one. The employee wellness, you budgeted for a couple of years 10,000. Obviously, we didn't spend anywhere near that, so now we're down to 5,000. What exactly is employee wellness?
Through the chair to Councillor Hippel, great question. So going back 3 years, employee wellness is the GL line. Essentially what the intent of that was when we brought it on, it was wellness sessions for our staff through diets, through exercise, yoga instructors coming and do mini exercises, but from a wellness side, different webinars, things like that. It's really never came to fruition over the last few years. Better part of half last year, we got starting into it. So we've not made that 10,000. So in fairness for the budgeting process, I thought dropping it in half to get us to within a space that we can get to and build the program from there. But it's totally employee wellness driven. So.
Yep, Councillor Hippel.
Thank you. So I think this is important, so I'm not, brushing this aside. Is this offered, you've got part-time, full-time, like for everyone straight across the board throughout the municipality?
Yes, great question through the chair to Councillor Hippel. Yes, I put it when I do it through email invites. I put it out to all our staff, inside, outside. Anybody that wants to sign up basis, whoever wants to attend. We have a wellness session actually this morning or this afternoon in our lounge downstairs where staff will come in for 45 minutes or so and through various programs. Today was a yoga instructor coming in and talking about meditation and work wellness, things like that. Really what the platform looks like, I'm looking at healthy eating, nutrition, webinars. Last year we did do a financial or retirement seminar, so I budgeted that there as well for those that are interested in retiring. Brought in some consultants, and they spoke to our team, and it was well received. So.
Councillor Pelkman, I believe you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. It's actually a follow-up to your question. The wages and benefits line, that would include like CPP and employment insurance, the government mandated benefits, because I know when we estimate where I work, it's 35%, and a good chunk of ours people, that's all they were subtracting.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of Director Payne? Councillor Pam.
Sorry, I didn't hear his answer. Was that a yes?
I'm sorry, that was a comment. Yep.
Through the chair to Councillor Pelkman, you're correct. As Councillor Kennis alluded to, on the sheet is on the very bottom line is the benefit side. That is encompassing of all your mercs, like your mandatory benefits, WCB, EHT, etc. So.
Thank you.
Councillor Pammer.
And I have a question, but I'm going to apologize up front because you may have been talking about this when I was trying to find the page. So the Human Resources Conferences and Conventions, you have 14,000 for 2024. That's a big jump. So
Great question. I was expecting that, so thank you for that. So if you look at the sheet, so conference convention, so I'm gonna back up a little bit. What I did in conjunction with the training GL, I backed that down 4,000 for 24 compared to 23 and increased the conference conventions. What's driving that is we're in about 6 months of embarking and rolling out our new HRS system at the municipality. That's our staffing, payroll, whole HRS model for staff and what have you. So it's a pretty significant implementation. So the reason for what drove that, there's a user conference. So we'll be, about June of this year, we'll be finished launching all the modules. And there's training modules, LDS, all built into it. So we'll be done launching it out. So in the fall of this year, there is a user conference to kind of go over all those different modules and how to optimize them. So that's why that's a one-time only. I don't expect that in the future. But I thought it'd be prudent that since we're rolling all these out, we want to get the best dollar for a buck, obviously rolling out this. So great question, though.
Councillor Pammer?
Just a quick follow-up, that conference is in like Australia or Mexico. Something crazy like that. It's like Toronto.
It's in North America. No, it's in Las Vegas actually.
Oh.
So,
Okay.
but I don't pick the locations, but that's where it happens to be.
Was it?
You won't get the town credit card when you go to that one. Any other questions of Director Payne? Thank you, Director. Chief Campbell, Police Services.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess it doesn't pay to go last as far as alphabetical order here. I just wanted to, first of all, for Councillor Pammer, I believe it's page 15 and 16 and 57, as I understand it. I'm working off of some documents that we use at the Police Services Board, so I was given that information from the Director of Finance, so I believe it's where you'll find the information. I was just going to start first with just making some comments. It's great to be in front of council. It's something that, as the police chief, I don't do a lot of. I certainly come to a lot of the meetings. I'm a bit of a political junkie, I guess you would say. But a lot of times I'm not here speaking in a formal process. So I just wanted to take a couple of minutes to just make some comments. And I just wanted to acknowledge, I'm going to say our service, and when I say that, it's your service as well, as a police service, is very community-oriented, community-based, and engaged in focusing on enhancing our overall community safety and well-being. And I wanted to say those comments because it's something that, as the chief since late 2016 in an acting capacity, and then when I formally got made the chief in May of 2017, it's been an ongoing sort of journey of ours to really embrace that as our model of policing. Understanding that policing, not only in this province, but in this country and even in North America, has gone through a lot of challenging times lately. Lots of demands, lots of expectations, lots of sort of finger pointing as far as when things go wrong. But this community, it's been very important for the members of your police service to strive to ensure that they are offering the best service possible to a community that deserves the best. You know, we are surrounded by large urban centers, and I think that if you spend any time in some of those larger urban centers, you'll see and you'll hear of certain issues that are pretty frequent in those communities. And so we as a police service really are trying to focus on ensuring that when you are either visiting here, choosing to live here, that we provide a community that is safe and that you feel that you can raise a family in and can open a business in, and that you have an overwhelming feeling of safety while you were here in this community. I want to sort of mention that the leadership in this police service, for the first time since I've been here, since '99, has 3 senior police leaders who are all from this area. And that means something when you see and you have an organization that is committed to ensuring that we are forging the strongest possible relationships. Again, not only with those people who have grown up here or are living here, but those newcomers who are coming to our community. You'll see that in our membership, and it's focused in our hiring practices in that we try to recruit people who have either come here, are from here, or have some sort of tie to here because of the engagement that it brings in their day-to-day operations. I want to comment about the delivering of excellent police services through the collaboration, and I'm going to identify some of our partners. And I'm very proud to be part of what's called management team here. And I have the utmost respect for the directors and the managers and the everyday staff who work not only in our organization, but in the hallways and doorways of Town Hall. And I'm quite pleased, and I'm actually quite proud when I'm out throughout the province speaking to my colleagues and bragging, and I'm going to use the word bragging, about the relationship that our organization, our police service, has with our board, with our council, and with our community workers, and specifically, as I mentioned, the directors who work in this town hall, because I can share with you that those relationships aren't always as strong and prosperous as you will see in some other communities. I also want to sort of give some thanks, and I'm going to call out some names here. Councillor Pelkman was a long-term board member. Councillor Brennan sits as the current chair. The mayor sits on the police services board as well. Deputy Mayor McGuire was a member for many, many years and has a lot of organizational awareness. And it goes without saying that our service not only being community and customer driven, we're trying to balance that, and through a lot of support of the board and this council, we've been able to become very inventive in utilization of technologies to make our service very effective in its delivery of services. We were one of the first police services in the province of Ontario to fully deploy body-worn cameras to all of our uniformed staff. I'm quite proud of that, and as a community and as a council, you should be very proud that you have a police service that is at the leading edge, on the front edge of utilizing technologies that not only help your frontline members gather and build strong cases as they present them to the courts, but it's also equally fair for your residents, your citizens, to know that they are being treated fairly and equitable in their interactions with police services. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it's the trust that we need as a police service with our community members to ensure that we can offer any sort of effective policing services in the community that we serve. So I wanted to sort of just make a statement. Again, I don't get a lot of opportunities to speak in front of council. It's more at our board level that I'm having these engagements. But I wanted to share those thoughts with council while I had the audience. I don't need to, again, because of the knowledge base here in this room, the relationship, I know the mayor uses the term church and state sometimes, but the relationship between the police services board as a governance board and the role that they have in ensuring that this community receives policing services at a effective and adequate status as it's defined in the Police Services Act. Come April this year, there'll be a new act, the Community Policing and Safety Act, which will replace the current Police Services Act, but a lot of those authorities will just maintain and carry on as they will. I wanted to highlight from the budget itself, and again, this was an operating budget that was presented to the board. I believe it was at our December meeting, if not the November meeting, which was our operating budget that was presented and again approved at the board level. I want to highlight just some of the revenue areas from our budget, just to sort of make, again, council aware of some of the commitments that the police service is undertaking to ensure that we deliver policing at an effective and efficient level, but also with due care to how we operate financially. So you'll see that we've been very active in pursuing provincial grants. There's a community safety policing grant. There's actually two streams to it. One is called the local, the other is the provincial priorities grants. And in both those cases, we have a 3-year commitment to funding for both staffing, equipment, and training. One of the grants actually brings in annually $140,000. The other grant is $72,000. This year we were successful in 2 additional grants. The MCERT, which is the mental health partnership we have with CMHA, we applied for and received an enhancement grant to that program. That was in the value of $110,000. We have a member who's part of our street crimes unit who wrote to the provincial auto thefts grant. Over a 3-year period, we will be receiving $266,000 in grant funding. We have a great relationship with probation and parole. It's ongoing for about 5 or 6 years now, where we rent space in our building, annually netting us about just shy of $11,000 in rent. It's not so much for the money, but the partnership and the work that we have in working with probation. The way probation works is a member of the community, after they have served their sentence and are placed on probation, having our regular meetings with a probation officer. That office used to sit in what was the Kenwick Mall, now the shops on Sydenham. Presented some serious safety concerns for their staff, not feeling safe, meeting people in an office sort of out of sight from the public view. So we took an opportunity to bring them into our policing building. It's been a great relationship, not only for the safety of their members, but the exchange of information we get from when someone comes in and is perhaps speaking to their probation officer. Perhaps we have some information that we need to speak to that community member, and it just helps with the overall effectiveness of investigating and ensuring that we are treating people fairly. Fire dispatch services that we operate. So we obviously dispatch and have for a number of years dispatched the 3 fire stations for the municipality. Back as far as 2014, we entered into an agreement with Middlesex County, who brokered, really I'll call it brokering a deal for all of the lower tier municipalities, and we started providing fire dispatch services for 19 stations, including the 3 local stations. We've also included on Oneida as an additional area that we provide fire servicing services to. And again, you'll see, I want you to sort of see that there is about an annual income of about $400,000 that we receive for those services. We're still expanding and looking for other opportunities, and later this week I have a meeting set up with a local area to expand possible additional 911 services that we may be able to answer on behalf of that agency or that area that is receiving it somewhere else currently, but is looking for more effective sort of services. The Ontario Police College Secondment Program is another area where we've generally utilized it as an opportunity for some of our senior members as they get later in their careers, an opportunity to leave the organization and go and teach at the Ontario Police College. It's a great program for us in that we receive full cost recovery of salary and benefits. Last year we had 3 members working there. 2 of them were members that actually, one in April and one in June, tendered their resignations. And both those members have actually got full-time employment at the college as a result of the opportunity they had while working there. And I believe that was maybe a question that Councillor Wilsey had forwarded on in regards to, I think in the budget line it showed that there was a, if I use the term, the revenue dried up about mid-year. And the answer to that is that both those members resigned. Again, one in April and one in June, so obviously that ended that piece. I'm going to mention So I think the spreadsheet, the budget that was approved at the Police Services Board meeting, and I think is in front of the council today, there's been some amendments that I was able to make to it. And this came after some recent information and announcements from two of our officers who have tendered their resignations with our police service. Both are leaving in early February. And so when this budget was prepared and approved at the Police Services Board, their salaries had been factored into the 2024 operating budget. And if I can just pause for a minute, the way that we present our operating costs, and specifically our salary and benefit lines, which make up 90% of our operating budget, we do it on a very controlled nature in that my executive assistant, Tammy DeBoer, we track every single employee that we have in the organization. And we track where their salary and benefits will be at all times of the year. So as an example, I may have an officer who is working as a 4th class constable, an introductory level into policing. And after the first year, and their anniversary date may be, say, June 1st is the example I'll use. They may move from 4th class to 3rd class. It may contribute to a $12,000 or $13,000 salary increase. We don't add that salary increase into the budget until that exact anniversary date. So when we build the budget and we present the numbers, it's a graduating number or salary number. We don't take what they are potentially going to make at the end of the year and use that as our baseline salary. It's continually building and growing throughout the year so that you have an accurate assessment of what our salary and benefit dollars will be at any given point in the year. So given that information, I went back earlier this week and recalculated what our salary numbers are going to look like for 2024, removing the 2 members who have resigned. We have 2 members who graduated from the Ontario Police College in December, who were, upon the board approving us to increase our complement by 2, suddenly became 2 replacement officers to replace the 2 experienced members leaving. We were able to, I'm going to say by good recruiting, find another recruit who was leaving the college at the same time, who had been employed by another service, who was able to start with us, who became the first of our 2 additional complements. We have a member at the college now who we actually brought in late December, and the reason we brought her on board early was because of the increased capacity of recruits at the Ontario Police College and the limits on seats. You have to be very strategic in ensuring that you get a seat at the college, otherwise you may not have a place to put a recruit. So we have our 2 additional recruits. As I say, their salary and benefit lines are very, very reduced compared to where we were before. That's a long way to get to the point of saying I've found about $148,000 in reduced salary and benefit costs that will be applied to our operating budget. So knowing the logistics of operating and like the police budget, I will reorganize the operating budget and re-present it to the board at our January meeting. But I'm thinking that this will sort of clear some runway, perhaps, for the overall budget process for the municipality. The only other things I really wanted to highlight, and then certainly open it up for any questions. When I look at what all of our additional expenses will be in 2024, the overall expense increase, if I can just make sure I get the right numbers I'm looking at here, is $411,429. That's the additional expenses from what we spent in 2023. $409,929. So shy of $1,500 sorry, that's just in the uniform. Sorry, let me go down. I've got, I was on the wrong page, sorry. My 2024 overall expenses will be $412,485. Of that $412,000, all of it except $8,000 is salary and benefit expense increases. So my operating expenses, non-salary and non-benefits, is $8,000.26. So I'll pause there in regards to if there's any questions council would like to pose.
Any questions of the chief? Councillor Hippel.
Thank you. Through yourself to Chief Campbell. Question about your MCERT grant. So is that driven by, back when they started it out, was that a pilot project? And then it came to fruition, and we've done very well in Strathroy-Caradoc, and it's very necessary in Strathroy-Caradoc. Will there be a time where perhaps if you don't have the grant, we won't have the people, or if we don't have the people, we won't have the grant? The services are always needed, but I'm just curious about that.
My mom always said it's good to be curious. So, through the chair to Councillor Hippel. And I'm not trying to give you a really long answer, but it may turn out to be. The MCERT program was something that came about in 2019. It initially came about as a partnership between our service, Middlesex OPP, and CMHA, identifying the need that we needed crisis workers on the front line responding to mental health calls, people in crisis, and finding a more or a different way of providing effective services. The funding that we initially got helped support a police presence, but there was also funding that helped supported the CMHA staff member. So there was really two sort of envelopes of funding that came in the initial grant funding. We are continually, and we've applied some of it to the community safety grants, the local priorities that we are receiving. So some of that money is helping fund the police position. The grant that I alluded to here in this enhancement grant was some additional monies that the province made available earlier this year, late 2023, that allowed for us to offer money. So it was grant money we received, but then it was donation in kind that we then send out to CMHA to have a second mental health crisis worker. Because what the program has showed us is that not only is it effective in dealing with crisis calls for service, but there's a secondary group, parents, siblings, friends of people who have or are suffering in crisis who also need supports. And those mental health calls are both live calls and follow-up calls. And we have a wonderful cache of stats that I'd be more than willing to share with you or any other council member to share and to show the depth of the program and the impacts it's having in this community.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yep, Councillor Wilsey.
I've got two. One of them I think you're gonna probably like. I'm just looking at the revenue for the MCERT grant, and it might just be a difference between the sheet you have and the sheet the council was provided. When I'm looking at the MCERT grant, there was 110,000 in 22. As long as I'm looking at the right line, there's nothing in 2023, and then 2024 was 258,000. Is that correct? We missed 2023, or is that just an update that we need to get as council?
Yeah, so through the chair to Councillor Wilsey. So I'm not sure if your sheet shows the 110 from 2022 in red or black. And on mine, it's in red, meaning it was a grant we had applied for, but were unsuccessful.
Okay.
So it wasn't actual revenue that we acquired in 2022. In 2023, the enhancement grant wasn't available, it wasn't offered. And then in 2024, I guess late 2023, 2024, we applied for it and then were successful. So it's 110,000 in the 2024. My number shows 258 because it's also combined with the provincial auto theft grant that we were also successful in getting.
Okay, all right, that makes sense.
Any other deputy mayor? Oh, sorry, follow up.
I had a second one. It was actually a different line item. It was down on the benefits for uniforms and boots. I'm just wondering if that, similar to some of the other departments, that number has been exceeded. We budgeted in 2022, we budgeted 18 and we spent 29. In 2023, we budgeted 18 and spent 25. And now you've got new recruits coming again. We've only budgeted 19, which is lower than we've spent for the last 2 years. So I don't know if that number needs to be reviewed. Just a small.
Yeah, so certainly through the chair to Councillor Wilsley. Some of that, so this is actually a benefit that is built into the collective agreement where there's a max. Well, let me explain it this way. Boots are hard to buy for members because they're all particular about what kind of boots they want. So we moved away from buying boots for a member to a member buying a pair of boots for themselves and then having a cap on what they would receive as a credit for that. I think the increase in why you're seeing a bit of an overage is the amount of new members that we've brought in who obviously come with no boots at all. And so we've sort of running through that course, yet we're also through the collective agreement and contractual obligations still sort of providing replacement boots for certain members who are eligible for them. I think there's a 2 or 3 year window before they're eligible to get a replacement pair of boots. But that would be sort of the additional new members that have come in. You'll also probably find in our uniform area, we've gone over because it's about $4,000 to $5,000 to kit up a new member. And over the last 18 months, we've probably kitted up about 5 to 6 new members, which we hadn't anticipated on doing.
Wait a second, I'm gonna let, okay, go ahead, Councilor Wilson, because I know the deputy mayor's got a couple.
Yeah, and just as a follow-up with that, that kind of aligns with what I thought was why we were going over. And I guess my question is, do we need to increase that 19,000 to make it more realistic to what we've been for the last few years? And I know you're talking about your small amount of increase, but I also want to make sure we're realistic going forward. We're not going to have a category that we're going over.
Through the chair to Councillor Wilsey, that's obviously something that we will give some consideration to. I put a nix on no Uggs, but we'll see what kind of other boots maybe they come up with. But, no, I appreciate your comments.
Deputy Mayor, then Councilor Brennan.
Probably somebody in the room would have thought I'd say something here since I have a background with these two gentlemen wearing white shirts today. So I don't have any questions of you, but I do want to take the moment because we never get to talk in this forum. So I think well-prepared budget. I'm happy to see that with a operating budget of $8,500,000 rough numbers, that only 2% is discretionary. So I think that goes a long ways to our Police Services Board, which would be Councillor Brennan as the chair, and the mayor sits on that. Great to see that we continue to have our homegrown police service in this community.
Councillor Brennan.
Just a thought with regard to boots. When we did the collective agreement, and this might be to the deputy chief because we sat on that together, was there a change in the benefits for boots when we came to the final agreement? I'm just wondering, did we increase the allowance? Because that might also, if we did, explain maybe some of the increase. And I think we had negotiated an increased amount that they could have each year. This may be an explanation of the increase.
Through the chair to Councillor Brennan, I do believe it has gone up a small increment, and it's probably in line with, I think it's every 2 years they're eligible for a new pair of boots. So we may have some that are now coming online as to being eligible and replacing those boots.
Councillor Pelkman, did you have a question, Steve?
Just more of a comment on one of the revenue lines with the background checks. One of the benefits of having our own service is the incredibly quick turnaround we get with the background checks. Since my employer requires every single employee to get a background check, I have a fair bit of experience with different services in the area and how quickly they get them back. And Strathroy-Caradoc is always the fastest, followed closely by Sarnia. But if they're with the OPP, we're waiting 3 to 4 times longer than our own service, which for us is problematic because we can't let those people work without the vulnerable sector check back. So it's just something that's a value and service to our employers in the community that require vulnerable and criminal sector checks, as well as our sports teams and Cubs and all those others that require background checks for their volunteers.
Any other questions? One more, Councillor Hippel.
Thank you. Just a quick one for Chief Campbell, and just and this is a good one actually. Hopefully, your OT, your overtime. So you are always like you're budgeting 62 or 60, and you're always below. So is that because our community is that good we don't need the OT? Or is that something, yeah, I was just curious on that because you know how well you run, but at the same time when we're short staff or short a complement, I guess I was just wondering how you got away with that. That's pretty good. OT is a lot lower than your budget, so.
So through the chair to Councillor Hippel, first of all, thanks for those kind words. It's been a journey to get to this point organizationally, that we've been able to manage the overtime and have less sort of draw on the overtime budget. A couple of factors probably at play here. One is a decision we made a number of years ago to change our staffing complement and scheduling model. To ensure that we had adequate resources on ground most of the time, or more of the time, and not really exposing ourselves. An example being, say, allowing on a 5-member platoon, allowing 2 members to be off at the same time, and then exposing yourself to the risk of someone calling in sick, and then having to then find a replacement at an overtime rate to meet minimum staffing. So we made some changes a number of years ago to sort of minimize those risks. We have I would say a uniform division. Although it's young, it's very engaged. They're eager to learn. They are hardworking. And some of those investigations that perhaps maybe would have been deployed somewhere else or reassigned somewhere else, we're able to sort of manage those still at the uniform level, and it's having less of an impact on the overtime piece.
Thank you. I have one, Chief. Unfortunately, I get to ask the tough question because this is the multi-year budget and there's also capital. And I think it's important to note that there is in 2025 a $9 million request in capital, and that is, as we know, the police expansion, and not for this meeting, but I would hope that in the next meetings, I think there's a reasonable expectation in the multi-year budget that once we put it there, the possibility that it's going to happen is greater. So between yourself and Director Dakin, at the next round, we should have some understanding of how we would pay for that so we could make the decision. But I did want to note that it's there now in the budget as a placeholder, but I think in order for council to make the decision, we need to understand how that would be paid for. If there's grants, construction one part of the year, paid part next year. So I think that's really important because that is the big ticket item that's on your budget. I apologize, I had to ask the tough question, Chief.
Well, thank you, sir. I didn't think it's a tough question. I think it's a great question. So just to maybe provide some history to some of the councillors here today. So we entered our building in March of 1999. It was built mid-1998 over on Francis Street. The former police service occupied the old, I think it was the old CIBC building, if my history serves me correctly, at the corner of Frank and Front. It's a building that is about 11,000 square feet, sits at grade level, and was intended for, I believe, an occupancy of 26 to 30 uniformed members. So we're currently sitting at 38 uniformed members, or total uniformed members, with additional civilian staff upwards to about 15 to 20, and we are crammed for space. This is a project that early in 2017, myself and Director Dakin started to have conversations about mapping out how would the police service and when would the police service, would it be appropriate to start looking at finding ways to address some of our both internal space issues and external space issues. I'll give you an example on the external. We have a training day going on today. I have 7 to 8 additional members who are scheduled to be there on a training day, and we are occupying 10 parking spots at the YMCA because we have no parking in our own facility. And on a daily basis, we occupy about 3 or 4 spaces over at the Y. And being good neighbors, there isn't a cost to the service for doing that. But it certainly highlights a challenge that we have externally anyways on that property. We've also taken the approach that this journey was going to be a 5 to 6 to 7 year journey to allow us to try to save for the day or the year when we were going to undertake this project. We've had some years where we have been able to find some surpluses. And I will tell you that our surpluses are usually based on officers not being able to come to work and us saving on those salaries and benefits. That's generally what leads to our surpluses. So we're still continuing and asking our members to do the same amount of work, sometimes at a reduced level of staffing. And if there's a payoff at the end of the year, it's that we have saved some money and are able to put some money away in a surplus. We've been very fortunate with that, and you know, this past year again was another year where we had a couple of early resignations, a couple of other members off on leave, and we're looking at a fairly healthy surplus again this year that we were hoping and will transfer over to a reserve fund. We've also given this time as an opportunity, a bit of a runway, I'll use that term, to build up some DC study funding as well, as that program has sort of been implemented. I mentioned the challenges we have with space limitations, the exterior, interior I mentioned already. One of the asks that we're looking to implement is indoor parking facilities. Currently we are the only 24/7 emergency services fully functional in this community at this time. Our fire service partners are great partners, but they're not a 24-hour service. They're not responding at the same time that the police are. And so the winter time, and I've seen it several times in our facility, is, you know, you have cars running at all hours of the day, ensuring that they're not frosting up or frosting over or snow covered, so that if an emergency call for service comes in, that you have the ability to be ready and deployable, and you're not out scraping a car off or trying to clean snow off so that you can safely travel to what call you need to go to. There's some other challenges, without going in too great a depth here today. You know, we have a communication center that with the arrival of NG 911, Next Generation 911, there's going to be an introduction of additional technologies, servers, and I would be more than happy for any counselor who hasn't been in our building to give you the half-hour tour, let you climb the ladder above the cell block area, which is probably a health and safety issue, but to sort of give you a full perspective of some of our challenges relating to spaces and lack of appropriate spaces. Some other areas that I think are important for council to maybe hear is the opportunity for the growth in the footprint of the building allows us to continue to expand on some of our partnerships we have. I mentioned probation occupies a space. I have 2 or 3 other community groups that would love to be able to find a space. Victim Services, Canadian Mental Health. I've even had some discussions about, is there an opportunity for town hall staff? Is there a space for HR? Is there a space for IT? You know, to sort of relieve some of the pressures of the challenges with this building, and is there other opportunities for municipal staff to work out of there? And of course, it goes without saying, I think some memory wellness pieces that you can, I think are crucial to any additions that you can add on to your facilities at this time. So that's sort of the ask and the want and sort of the history behind that. Some of it, I hope I've explained about, you know, the building of the reserve, the utilization of some of the DC charges that would help sort of pay for some of these, or pay for the expansion. And like I say, it's been something that we've been sort of building towards. It wasn't just sort of an idea that, you know, our friends at the fire service are getting something new and we wanted something too. This is something that's really been a quiet sort of focus of ours for a number of years, and you know, we just want to ensure that we are adequately serviced to provide the excellent service that we know we can.
Thank you, Chief. Any other questions of Chief Campbell? Seeing none, speaking of boots, I think these boots are made for walking, so we'll take a motion to adjourn. Councilor Canis, second by Councilor Brennan, all in favor? Carried.